Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. One of the companies that makes really cool stuff to help with that and a lot of other things is Real Avid. Joining me right now is Dustin Sanchez from Real Avid. Hey, Dustin, how are you, partner?
I'm doing great, sir. How are you doing?
I am good. You do an awful lot of stuff with, showing people how to fix their guns, fine-tune them, tinker with them, stuff that I don't even understand, like a third of the stuff you're doing, going, I don't even know what he's talking about. But it sure is cool, man.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been an amazing journey, and I couldn't have done it without all the people that came before me.
Well, okay. I mean, if we just start with AR-15s, you can buy a rifle, an AR-15, and it shoots, and a lot of them shoot really well. So why does somebody want to go tinkering with them?
I think I like to look at ARs as like the adult Legos. We love to have something that's just ours, right? It's something that, there's a lot of them, but this one has a bunch of little things on there that I love, or I'm looking for a certain type of accuracy out of it. So, there's a difference in, price points and accuracy that you can get out of barrels and bolts and, things like that. So I think it just comes down to customizing a setup that A, is yours and yours only, and then B, it will run and shoot the way that you're the most comfortable with it. A lot of shooting comes down to the mentality aspect of you think your firearm will perform a certain way, and if you believe it'll do that, then that's, then naturally you'll just start to run it a little better to a certain degree, right? I mean, there's still fundamentals and things like that involved.
Yeah, basically having confidence in your tools.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, I was just looking at a video you were doing on dwell time, and people are going to go, what? What did he just say, dwell time? Yeah, you vary the weight of the buffer tube to slow down or speed up basically the action when you pull the trigger of the bolt carrier group coming back, and how long it takes or how short it takes to do that determines where in the process of the powder burning process that the action starts opening up, and you can end up with less or more muzzle velocity. And you're actually tweaking this to maximize accuracy, aren't you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, it comes down to, if I'm looking for my rifle, my ammunition for this particular setup to perform a certain way, there's little things we can do on changing the weight of our buffer system or our actual bolt carrier, which is going to allow us, like you were kind of saying, get more powder burn. Or we can, lighten it up so that, we're not getting as much. And all that's going to do is change the velocity of the bullet and things like that. But also we're going to be able to change perceived recoil. So that's going to be the amount of recoil you believe you're actually feeling. And that can all change based on my compensator, the grain that I'm running for, the bullet and the muzzle velocity. So, dwell time's a very interesting one. And really the way I came across that was my rifle was zeroed. I was getting ready to go shoot a 3-gun match, and I was working for JP Rifles at the time, and I was actually building for them, and I changed from a low mass operating system to an ultra low mass operating system. So I went from steel to aluminum, and when I got to the match, my zero had changed. And of course, now I'm like, duh, of course my zero would have changed. But at the time I didn't know. And I'm like, I zeroed this 3 days ago. All I did was change the mass. And, I shot I had a re-zero and then came back and started shooting. I had a long conversation with John Paul, who's the founder and creator of JP. And through that conversation and a lot of other conversations and some experimenting, I found out a lot more about dwell time than I think I would have ever known if I would have never messed around with it.
Okay, that's getting really geeky into the gun stuff, which is fun. But I think what we're describing and what Real Avid's all about is, look, we make tools and accessories, and you can keep it very shallow. Here's just a vise that you're going to use when you're just doing something. Or you can go, like we were just talking about, as geeky as you want to get. And it's really up to you as to how much you want to do this and how much you enjoy it.
Yes, sir. Yeah, with Real Avid, we like to pride ourselves in being the leader in gun DIY. I mean, we're going to give you all the tools that you need to work on a shotgun, pistol, rifle, as if that's a bolt gun or you go into ARs. I mean, we have over 219 different products that will help you from cleaning, modifying, building, mounting optics to, trying to zero your optic, things like that. So it's a great job. It's fun, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
Well, you've been doing a lot of long-range shooting now, I've been hearing.
Yes, sir. I think I'm on about year 4 now. Still taking a beating from some of those guys out there have been doing it for a while, but man, it's fun.
What's it take? I mean, on the simplest basis, what's it take to hit something at 1,000 yards or beyond with your rifle?
You're looking at, on the simplest basis. You want to find the best performing ammunition that you can get. Be able to call the wind or have somebody with you that can spot your shots and have a good optic. I mean, there's a lot of rifles out there that can do it. It's just, really comes down to, is my ammunition consistent? And when I mean that, I mean is if it can consistently shoot, let's say, 3,100 feet per second, or is it going to do 3,100 feet per second one shot, and the next one's 3,200 feet per second, and the next one maybe 2,950. If we have that variable within our ammunition, we're going to start having a hard time hitting our target and understanding truly what that projectile is doing at that distance. So find a good load, get a good optic, have somebody spot for you, and get out there and just start going to town. I've seen guys shoot a mile with their 223. So it's having the right people and the right team around you. There's a lot of stuff we can do with our rifles. That's amazing.
And if you don't know much about this, your local club where they're doing this kind of stuff will welcome you with open arms. They would love to have you come out and say, "Look, guys, I don't know anything about it, but I want to learn." And people go, "Cool, come on over, shoot with us. Shoot my rifle. We'll get you into this thing, right?"
Yes, sir. I wouldn't be where I was at if it wasn't for people encouraging me to just show up to the range and shoot and teaching me and letting me run their gear. This shooting community is probably one of the most, welcoming, with their arms open, saying, "Come on in, we're going to take care of you. And if you run out of ammo in a match, I'll give you some of my ammo. If you don't have the right optic or the right rifle, I'm going to give you my setup, and just come have fun with us." It's a fantastic community.
Dustin, you had an experience in the last few years. And I might just let you pick it up and describe, where do you live and what was going on and what happened here?
Yes, sir. So I live about 2 miles south of downtown Minneapolis. And so when the whole George Floyd incident happened, that was about roughly 1.5 miles from my house. When everything happened and, there were some peaceful protests, but there were also some not so peaceful rioting that was going on, and that kind of spread from what they now call George Floyd Square towards downtown and then towards my house. And so, though I'm in a residential area, we have a really popular part of town called Uptown. I'm not too far from that square, and we had a bunch of retail stores. So when everything kind of happened on Tuesday, and I believe it was Monday night, actually, all the buildings were, windows were being blown out and everything like that, and they were just robbing everything. And then over the next couple of nights, the aggression that picked up with some of these people continued to raise, and they got a little bit more confident, a little bit more brave throughout the week.
Well, and they got more brave because the police weren't doing anything about it, right?
Well, yeah. So the police, they had their hands full. Their hands were tied, for one, and then they were just overwhelmed in general. And so, yeah, as people started to notice that they were able to rob and loot stores, and the cops really weren't able to show up at a decent, in a decent amount of time, or just weren't showing up at all, then they started to get more brave, and a lot more things started going on. And then you start having people start showing up with guns and being more aggressive about, hey, I'm going to steal this. This is our block. This is what we're going to do here. And they didn't care if residents lived in that area or not. They were going to try to come in and take it over. A lot of that was some gangs, and then other parts of that were just people being hoodlums and Just no
Sure.
regard for human safety or anything like that.
All right. So what happened? I heard that you got guns pointed at you.
Yeah, so leading up to that time, guns being pointed at me just was non-existent. And then within that first week, I had about 36 firearms pointed at me, directly at me, not in my general direction, but at me. It got to the point where, one night, I actually, at that point, I was like, I had to draw my firearm to change the situation. And after that, I really started to change how and some of my neighbors, how we started to kind of protect and shut our neighborhood down. So we kind of went through and started setting up, road barricades and stuff like that to really keep people from coming down our blocks. And as a community, we started to work really, more closely together. But yeah, the firearms was pretty aggressive. The first one I had pointed at me was an AK-47. And he yelled he was yelling at everybody, and then looked right at me and was like, "This is our block now." And at that point, I was like, "Well, I think it's time to change from a everyday carry pistol to something a little bigger, like one of my ARs."
So you started carrying the AR, having that with you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I did. And that was a very hard decision for me to make, because that's just not what I'm used to, what I'm used to seeing or being that part of, especially here in the United States. That's not something where you really see a civilian is patrolling the streets or anything like that with an AR. So I didn't want to be a guy that was patrolling the streets or, being super aggressive or trying to intimidate people with a firearm, because that's not what I was about. But it did come to the part of, I have people that lived right across the street from me and a couple houses down that they depended on public transportation. So when a lot of people left the town, those people were here by themselves, and the buses and things like that had shut down. And at a certain point, they started throwing Molotov cocktails at civilians and buildings, residential buildings as well as commercial buildings. So it was a more of a stance of like, hey, we have to protect our own. We have to protect, our neighbors. We have to protect our neighborhood. We have to protect, even these commercial buildings, because at this time, a lot of these people were finding out that they didn't have rioters insurance. So if their place got looted and burned down, that was a complete loss to them.
Did you ever have to point your gun to anybody?
I did. We had one incident where a guy attacked a young lady, and he was on top of her, punching her in the face, and nobody was doing anything. So I took off running out there, and I had to get him off, and it took me pulling my firearm for him to stop punching her and getting off of her. It's not one of those moments I really like to, it's not that I'm proud of it or anything like that. It was something that had to be done. I just wish it, never would have came to that. But yeah, that was the first time I had actually pulled my firearm on somebody in a pretty bad situation.
Once he saw the gun, is that what made him stop?
It is. That was the only thing that made him stop. A lot of people were yelling at him, trying to grab him, and he was kind of throwing them off. And then when I ran out there and I pulled my pistol and I pointed at him, then his hands came up and he was like, "Hey, I'm innocent. I'm not doing anything wrong." While he's on top of a girl and she's bleeding, and she's had multiple surgeries from that incident. We have stayed in touch with her, and she's had multiple surgeries from that. So it wasn't the greatest moment.
And with your background as a shooter, a competitive shooter, and everything else, obviously you know what you're doing. You look like you know what you're doing. And that's got to have some effect on somebody, where you look like you know what you're about and are committed to the use of the gun if need be.
Yes, sir. I've told a lot of people since a lot of that happened was, a lot of people are like, well, you need to go out there and train so you're proficient with it. And I look at it, even in that instant as, every time a projectile leaves my firearm, whether I'm at the range or if it was in a home defense situation, that fire or that projectile has a lawyer's name attached to it. Because you're going to be sued. You're probably going to face some kind of criminal action right away, possibly. It depends on what state you live in. So I believe getting out there training is critical to being at least more confident and a little calmer in those situations than if you've never drawn your pistol before or anything like that.
But, Dustin, you knew all of that, and yet you still chose to go intervene to save this woman. Did you have to think about it, or did you just react?
I reacted. That's one of those where I thought about it since then. I would have done the same thing even after thinking about everything. She was not in a good situation. It was one of those where the guy was definitely stronger than her. And he was coming down, he was laying, he was putting in some pretty hard hits on her face. And she was in a bad position. And, that's just one of those moments you have to get involved in, and deal with what's going to kind of happen after that, no matter what. I don't know if she would have really survived if he would have kept going. Yep.
No, I understand. Well, I'm glad everybody came out of that. You didn't get hurt. You didn't have to shoot the guy, that's a plus. And you got him off of her. So good on you. But man, living through the riot deal, for those who say, well, gee, why would I need X? I always say, why would you possibly need X? And I always tell them, you just don't have a good enough imagination if you can't figure out why.
Yes, I had, my neighbors were that way. They didn't understand why I had firearms or anything like that. They actually called the cops on me before because I was unloading the guns. They were in their cases, but I was unloading them from my car. They called the cops on me. But after the riots, they are now my friends, and they've been very thankful that I had firearms and I was able to use those to deter a lot of the stuff that happened in our neighborhood and then on our block. So, yes, sir. The Second Amendment, as a lot of people here, at least in Minneapolis, their minds changed about that.
Yeah, I bet you're right. Dustin, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And listen, thank you for taking care of that woman and all the things you did there. And frankly, for sharing your experience. A lot of people need to think about this, the what ifs that they've never thought about before. Thank you again so much.
Oh, no, thank you for having me on. I love your show, and keep doing what you're doing.
All right. Appreciate you. Take care. Well, there you go. His neighbors called the cops on him, competitive shooter, when he was taking guns out of his car, taking them into his house in cases, because they couldn't imagine why anybody would, a legitimate reason that somebody would have guns, much less a lot of guns, until the riots, until people are throwing Molotov cocktails and jumping on women and beating them senseless. And then he comes out, maybe with some friends who have guns and know what they're doing. They stop the rioters. They save the woman. They're taking care of the streets because, as you said, the police were either overwhelmed or ordered to back off, whatever. Doesn't really matter why. A lot of times you get caught up in the why and it doesn't matter. You just go, that's just what it is. This is what we're dealing with now.